or discontinued. So you're talking about a bottle that's not quite, 150 years old. You're getting pretty close if you get into the 1870s, but in the area where I'm at, we weren't incorporated until the late 1880s, early 1890s. So most of the bottles I'm looking for are about 130 years old. And that doesn't sound old, but in the grand scheme of things, if you think about a piece of glass surviving that amount of time, much let alone floating down a creek, or, if it's been buried in a dump for a long period of time, it's been exposed to elements, whether it froze during the wintertime or whether a tornado passed by. There's a lot of stuff going on for that glass to survive. So to me, it's still astonishing. And not to mention the age of a bottle doesn't dictate the value. So that's something a lot of people get confused about. But the collectability side is still massive.
Yeah. Any idea on why light bulbs survive, but some of these thick glass bottles don't?
Oh, I know. Have you ever dug one and it blown up when you were digging it?
No, I haven't had that happen yet.
Well, there's a type of gas that they put in them. I don't know if it was halogen or what back then, but if you're digging and you hit one with your shovel tip, they make like a little explosion. It sounds like a little bottle rocket going off sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, well, actually, I wonder if perhaps I have then, because I've heard that and I'm like, thinking, what the heck? Did something just, yeah, so probably. I'd never put two and two together that it was a light bulb.
Yeah, it was whatever was in there. I mean, I haven't really done the research, but I'm assuming it's probably halogen related, considering that's what's still used today. And any type of gas can be flammable. And yeah. I know we've dug quite a few, and sometimes we'll pull them out in their hole and we'll just kind of toss them to the side. And as soon as they hit the air, they'll blow up and make a really loud noise too, even if you don't hit it with your shovel.
Jeez. Yeah, I never understood how they survived in the creeks, how they survived, like when I'm mudlarking, I'm like, how is this still intact? But yet that bottle that's over like almost an inch thick is broken.
Well, and sometimes, depending if it was a soda or not, sometimes they were broken intentionally by a bottler. So keep that in. That way they couldn't be turned back in for a deposit or something like that. So if it's something super thick, think about that. And then, the terrain of the creek that you're in or the dump also, that could affect whether or not it was broken. If it's a rocky creek, it's more likely to hit a rock and break, obviously. But I've never found a light bulb in a creek, though. I'll say if you've done that, you beat me on that one.
Yep. And I have. Right. That's why I'm like, I don't understand. But, yep.
So, Brenda,
go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to ask, what about crockery? Do you ever find like whole crocks or anything like that? That type of.
We find whiskey jugs more than we do anything. Of course, moonshining was a huge deal. After 1919 here in Alabama, that's when Prohibition hit. So you had all of these bootleggers that set off into the woods. They set up their stills and they needed jugs to carry around their whiskey. So a lot of times we'll be in the creeks, and I've actually stumbled across quite a few moonshiner sites from well over a century ago. And, of course, you'll know you're at one depending on if you find the still itself. Last year we found the worm to a still, the copper, the coil part of it. We found one of those, and then we started finding I wish I would have. I actually laid it on the bank, and I was going to come back and get it because it was like a 7-mile hike in, and I already had a bag full of bottles.
Right.
I came back and somebody got it.
Oh, boy.
But it was, I'm pretty mad at myself for not taking it. I didn't think anybody was going to walk where I was, but needless to say, there's a lot more people out in the woods than you realize, I guess.
Oh, definitely.
But yeah, whiskey jugs primarily. We don't find crockery as much as you would think. We found quite a few that are broken, but it seems like the churns and the butter churns and stuff like that, for some reason, we never find them whole.
Yeah. I've never seen one whole in any of the dumps I've dug in or anything. They're all in pieces. But yeah, I was curious. That's neat about the jugs, though. I would love to find a whole, jug like that. And the distillery, that's even cooler. Maybe you'll run across that piece of copper on another adventure.
No, I'm quite positive. I'm quite positive somebody grabbed it.
Okay.
When I went back, there was footprints there that weren't mine, so I don't blame them for getting it. And
yeah.
That's kind that's kind of the bad part about making videos. You want to show the scenery and you want everybody to enjoy it as much as you do. But if you give away too much of the scenery, then you give up your spots too. So the ethics of treasure hunters nowadays are not necessarily what they once were. You can't stake claim on a creek, obviously, either because of it being in our area anyways, if it's navigable by a kayak or a canoe or anything like that, usually the property lines end at the creek bank. And so we use the Onyx app while we're walking the creeks to see where the property lines end, and that gives us a lot of leeway that we didn't have just a few years ago when we didn't have smartphones. So there's a lot of stuff that we use in our arsenal now that the older diggers or the older collectors, they didn't have in their time.
Right. Now, tell us more about that Onyx app.
Well, the Onyx app is primarily for deer hunters, turkey hunters, stuff like that. But basically, it's like $9.99 a month to have it. And you can unlock different schematics on the map. So say you are a deer hunter and you want to know which way the deer are traveling. The hunters will mark it, and you can actually tell which direction the deer have been traveling in your area. The other thing is if you pull it up, it'll tell you the owner of current plots of land as well as the houses. So say if you're in a neighborhood and it looks like a house is abandoned or something like that, and you want to look up the current property owner, if there's back taxes, it's a really fast and easy way to do that.
Okay. I haven't heard of that app. I have a friend that uses the Landglide app, and I think it's around the same price a month.
I use Landglide too. They're both great apps. Both of them work very similarly.
Okay. Well, cool. Good to know. I noticed also your wife has really gotten into a lot of this treasure hunting with you and digging bottles, and especially the creek walks. Has she? She's gotten pretty knowledgeable about it as well, hasn't she?
Yeah, it's funny that, a lot of people, see my wife and they probably think, oh, that's cool that his wife goes out with him. What they don't realize is a lot of times she's my driving force. There's a lot of weeks where I'm just exhausted from working a 40-hour job and be like, babe, I don't feel like digging bottles this week. She's like, oh, come on, let's go. And she'll spunk me up, get me going. And usually whenever we go out, we usually find something too. So I tease her, and she's all about it more than even I am sometimes. And for that, I guess I'm incredibly blessed. And I'm trying to make my daughter into a treasure hunter as well. She's very excited about the water hunts currently, not so much the digging.
Fun.
That's awesome. It sounds like a great team effort, and it sounds like soon to be family effort. So very exciting. Very exciting. Now, did you say how you actually got into treasure hunting in the beginning?
I don't think I did.
Okay.
So back in the 1970s, my dad was a deer hunter. He was walking through a pine thicket, and he heard something squeak beneath his boot. What it was pine straw on two 1880s whiskey bottles that were barely exposed. He knew enough to know that they were cool, and he picked them up and took them out. What he didn't know was they were valuable. Upon getting back home, his neighbor was at his house. He saw the bottles, and he offered my dad a chunk of change at the time for him in the time period, and my dad took it. Well, it kind of, I guess it got the gears turning in my dad's head, and he's like, wait a second, these old bottles are worth money. And it kind of started a whole, I guess you'd say a wormhole that he went down. And so he started looking for bottles, and then by 1980, so about 7 or 8 years after the bottle struck him, he got into metal detecting. So he started swinging Garrett metal detectors in 1980, and from there he dug all the way till I was born in 87. I'm telling how old I am here. And in 87, he almost all but quit treasure hunting. And it was because he was having to work so much harder, I guess, to take care of me and my mom. And he just kind of got out of it altogether. Like a lot of people do, they lose their hobbies to have to work, sadly. And we didn't start back treasure hunting until I was around 7 or 8, I guess. So by the early 90s, we started arrowhead hunting. And so we were doing a lot of field walking and what we call logging roads. So Alabama's log nonstop here, and there's always logging roads cut through where they can get their skidders and tractors through. And we could walk through and pick up arrowheads right out of the middle of the road. We'd never dig for them. They were just surface finds. And we did that till I was about 12 or 13, I guess. And by the late 90s, the plug-in plant started to come into play. So they stopped plowing the fields. The logging started to slow down, and we lost most of our areas that we were used to be able to find arrowheads at. So we shifted back into metal detecting for a short period of time in my early teens, and then I lost contact with it. My interest went elsewhere to cars and girls, I guess, like most boys do when they hit 14, 15, 16. And I fell out of the hobby altogether till I got married again to my wife. And she started this whole thing up, like I just said. She started this whole thing up when KG and Ringy's TV show came on. She's like, wait a second, your dad has those metal detectors in his closet. Why aren't we using them?
How funny.
Yeah, so I think it was their first season, however long ago that's been now, 13, 14 years ago. We had only been married a few years at the time, and we took the old detectors out. We went to some curb strips in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. For those of you that know about college football, that's home of the University of Alabama. We were about 6 blocks from Bryant-Denny Stadium, and we started finding a bunch of mercury dimes along the curb strips. And that was all it took, and that lit a fire under me, and I started doing some research, and I found some YouTube channels at the time. There was only a couple. Now there's thousands that were metal detecting, and I was watching those guys, and my wife's like, why aren't you making videos? You could do this. This is what we do. And I guess that's where my inspiration came from, truthfully, was from my dad, passed on to my wife, reigniting the flame.
It's awesome.
Wow. And you owe a lot to your wife, to say. She got
absolutely.
Back into that, and that's wonderful, and got you into your YouTube channel. If you don't mind, tell everybody a little bit about your YouTube channel, for those that don't know the name of it, all that goodies. And when you started your YouTube channel?
Well, it was 2017 when we started the YouTube channel. And just like everybody, when I started, I wanted to have a metal detecting channel. And so I was like, I'm going to do a metal detecting channel. Well, I put a couple of metal detecting videos out, and I was competing against the big dogs. You got Aqua Chigger at the time, and Nugget Noggin. The Uber Boys had made an appearance. I think Green Mountain was coming in pretty close right there behind it. All of these guys that well in the hobby were starting to put out some crazy good videos. And I watched the Hoover Boys, I believe it was at the time, and they were finding gold coins and coppers and, stuff that was older than the state of Alabama that I could never dream of finding. I said, there's no way I can compete with that. I was like, there's just no way.
Yeah.
And, at the time, I thought it was all about what you found and not necessarily your personality. With time, I figured out that's not what YouTube was about. People are more there to enjoy the journey with you than they are what you're finding.
Right.
But at the time, I said, well, I've got to make a shift. If I'm going to make it a go and try to have a decent channel, I need to shift to something else. It was, I guess, about a month and a half, 2 months after I made my first metal detecting video that I made my first bottle video. And the bottle video was how to find antique bottles, which, lo and behold, there was not one video on that on YouTube. And that video took off like a rocket. And so I just kind of stayed where the success was, which was in the bottle niche, and just kind of followed it along for, I guess, a good solid year or two till about 2019. And we started becoming more diverse, and we started doing more metal detecting and introducing that back into the channel itself. And as we introduced it back into the channel along with the bottle hunting, it seemed to be a deadly combo. People would watch the metal detecting, they would watch the bottle digging, and I said, well, maybe I can introduce a little bit more. And so we started introducing fossil hunting and just exploring in general, and abandoned buildings and overgrown graveyards, you name it. We were just doing a little bit of everything. And lo and behold, here we are, approaching 70,000 subscribers on YouTube, and we just crossed 600,000 followers on Facebook. So I guess people enjoyed what we did. I never thought that they would, but it completely blew our mind by the support that we received. And frankly, I really think it came down to being willing to pivot with my channel. If I'd have just stayed metal detecting, I would have probably never been the size that I am. As much as I enjoy it, there was just too many channels.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of competition there. But, yeah, you've stuck with the bottles, and you're doing a big well, I know the bottles is a lot of the reason why a lot of people watch you, but I've noticed anything where you're, in the water, creeks, anything, those videos usually do well. I know they do on mine, so I'm sure they do well on yours. What are your most popular videos, you think?
Absolutely the water. We went to Nashville back in January and we dug just this